business content at CVM TV News anytime, anywhere. Subscribe now to CVM TV News to see it happen.
Jamaica, make we do the right thing. Make we live good today for a better tomorrow. Talk it out. Don't fight it out. The time by the Ministry of National Security is
6:30.
A study across several businesses in almost 24 countries in the Caribbean shows that Jamaican workers earn considerably less than their regional counterparts in similar jobs across the region. The impact of this, the reality of Jamaicans earning less pay for doing the same jobs as are done elsewhere in the Caribbean, brings with it questions and perhaps paints a picture of the state of the Jamaican economy, and of course the obvious question, what to do to bring the Jamaican wage situation up to par with the rest of the region. We have that discussion here on Lead Story this evening on this Friday. Welcome to Lead Story on this Friday. So it's an issue that has been the topic of discussion so far this week in Jamaica, the issue of Jamaican workers and what they are paid. When the Caribbean Society for Human Resource Professionals did their study, they found that Jamaican workers, if you look at similar jobs across businesses and across countries in the Caribbean, were being paid less than their rivals in countries such as the Bahamas, St. Kitts, Nevis, Barbados, you name them. Jamaicans way down the bottom of the totem. And of course, people had a field day on social media talking about the Jamaicans and their situation, especially people from outside Jamaica, saying that you guys are so cockatoo, as they say, and you earn nothing for doing similar jobs to that which we do in our part of this beautiful place called the Caribbean. I've invited some experts to give their perspective on what signal this is sending to the government, to the labor market. What are the configurations necessary to bring these salaries up to par, if par is where the leading Caribbean countries find themselves right now? And it's a discussion that I'm keen to get into. Before that, though, we prepared a package that's not quite ready just yet. What we're going to do is to go straight to my guest here with me in studio, and then I'll introduce my guests online. Keenan Faulkner is with me. He is an economist, a man who has emerged as a leading voice where analysis of these things is concerned, and helping those who aren't so inclined to understand situations like these so they can see their arguments when they have the discussions with their friends and their family. Keenan, welcome to Lead Story here on CVM TV.
Yeah, thanks a lot, George.
All right. So the Caribbean Society for Human Resource Professionals, I always say human rights, human resource professionals, has released these findings. For some people, it's a surprise that similar jobs across the Caribbean, when you map what people are paid to do them, Jamaicans are falling way down on the totem. Firstly, is it surprising to you?
No, it's not surprising at all. Given, the profile of the persons who work in Jamaica, it's really hard to attract higher wage jobs. I mean, you think about the fact that our labor force, 60% just doesn't have any post-secondary qualifications at all, right? Only 15% has a degree, that equates to around 200,000 out of 1.4 million. So even though unemployment is going down, you do question what are the quality of the jobs being created, right? We have this paradox of growthless jobs, right? So it just means that each additional unit of labor is becoming less and less productive. And then productivity itself is just another conversation that I think cannot be attributed to just individual circumstances, but the fact that we have declined progressively over the last 40 years by 1% every single year, basically, it begs the question that this issue is very structural. It has to do more with organizational dynamics, systems, procedures. How do we embed a culture of conducive to productivity? And so all of that is, it permeates across industry. So it's not just the lower paying jobs, even at the C-suite level, the middle management, and so on. So that is really the structural problem of the Jamaican economy, that we just don't generate enough wealth in order to pay persons what they're worth.
So here's the thing. As I looked at the findings from which were released, of course, a full report, you'd have to purchase it to read the full report to see all of the good numbers, but there was enough meat given to us to chew on. Here's the thing I thought to myself, Keaton, and I said, well, effectively what the report is saying, a professional picked at random in the Caribbean, you will find that professional from elsewhere in the Caribbean is earning more than their Jamaican counterpart in the related area. A professional picked at random. And I said, if I look at it like that, then it becomes even more sad, the tale. But I ask this, is the report reflecting a government and a system's ability to pay relative to what the person is worth being reflected in their paycheck?
It probably doesn't, drill down into that much detail. It details around 78 industries, I think, across 20 Caribbean countries and 119 job titles. So, it's just a broad sample, but it is indicative, really, the fact that you can pick any job title and it would still be less. I mean, yes, broadly speaking, the cost of living does correlate with the wages, because Bahamas, St. Kitts and Nevis and Barbados are not cheap places to live. And so, even if the cost of living in Jamaica were higher, I don't think that's going to move salaries in a particular direction. You mentioned public sector, and that was actually from a minor part of the survey. It was more even in the private sector. But you think about even in the public sector, yes, we've had the compensation review. It has brought up salaries and more than doubled it in aggregate over the last, 4 to 5 years. But that is just, doing something that had not been done before. So we're basically bringing up ourselves to a level that should be the base, right? But it's not, transforming or transformative, really, because persons, even with the new salary scales, they're going to say, oh, it is too low, right? And the private sector now, yes, they're raising salaries in response to that, but overall, it just can't keep pace with the increase in the cost of living.
Absolutely so. And for an economy that year over year for the past 20 years is growing at minus 1%, 1%, 2%, what the hell do we expect in terms of the ability of businesses to pay competitive wages? Back with more as we look at the issue of where Jamaicans fall on the pay totem across the Caribbean. Study shows we are down at the bottom.
Truth is, HIV affects everyone. Truth is, avoiding care leads to a weaker immune system. That means you could get really sick. The truth is, the hardest pill to swallow isn't the medication. It's the problems that follow when you don't take them. Let's get through this together. Remain in care. You can live life to the fullest with HIV. And that's the truth. A message from the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
Bashco is having the biggest sale of the year for 2 days only. November 29th and 30th, up to 50% off this Black Friday. Pop-up deals offering 30% off selected items until December 2nd. Follow Bashco on all socials at Bashco Jamaica for more information. Mark your calendar and subscribe to Bashco YouTube channel for not miss the biggest sale of the year. Bashco, the store that gives you more.
No more fear of missing out. CVM TV News is on YouTube. Get up-to-date news, sports, and business content at CVM TV News anytime, anywhere. Subscribe now to CVM TV News to see it happen.
Thank you. And I don't have to pay for this.
Yes, it's Santa.
In the house. Let them sit under your arm as well.
They say Nick, but you got a bit in that bag, yeah.
From now on.
Let's go right into our first headline.
They say Nick, but you got a bit in that bag, yeah. With the lights off, 'tis the season.
Going to a break.
The Caribbean Society for Human Resource Professionals says the Bahamas topping the pay table, able to pay above market, I'm reading from their summary, for more than 97% of the roles examined in that country. Jamaica's above market salaries only account for 8.3% of the roles assessed with the bulk, or near 92% of the roles assessed as falling below market value. Obviously, we couldn't have a discussion like this without hearing the expert opinion of the trade unions, and one of the foremost exponents in the field, Helene Davis-White, as she has joined us this evening. Good evening, Helene.
Evening, George.
Good. This study serves up something that perhaps you will tell me that, George, I already knew this, correct?
For sure.
All right.
So we would have been in contact with our regional partners.
Yes.
And colleagues, and so we would have some of this information already.
I have to ask you, Helene, if this very important point, which I know many people will lean on as they discuss this issue, the ability of government and private sector employers to pay, their ability to pay, which of course in any consideration where jobs and salaries for jobs are concerned, is the most important thing, your ability to pay. Is it that the ability to pay more exists, but firms, private and public, are not paying that more? Or is it that the economy, as Keenan has so very well articulated, is so bastardized, so vulcanized over time that it can't do better than it is doing at the present?
I think that may be a factor, but I think when I look at the report, I haven't seen the actual report. That's what is reported in the media. One of the important parts of it for me is the difference between Jamaica and the rest of the Caribbean in terms of how the salaries are dispersed, meaning that you have far more persons in other countries of the Caribbean being paid at the top levels, while you have fewer persons in Jamaica. Well, the majority of them in Jamaica are at the lower levels. I think, if I remember correctly, only 8% were being paid above market in Jamaica.
Yes.
And when you look at the salary structure in Jamaica, and a lot of private sector firms, and also in the public sector, because I argue that the compensation restructure in the public sector actually resulted in us importing into the public sector some of the wide gaps in that exist in the private sector in terms of the difference between, say, your highest paid and your lowest paid.
Yes.
And I think that is part of the construct that we have to actually look at in Jamaica. That's one of the reasons why you would see what's happening in the tourism industry. So
yes.
You get all of it about the industry doing very well and the hotels being very profitable and so on. But the persons who are at the bottom end, who see themselves as the quote-unquote real workers, are the ones that are not receiving what they consider to be their just due. So it is this kind of disparity that is being actually emphasized in the Jamaican context that I think that we have to actually relook. Because if we don't, and you continue to have a society in which the people at the bottom are constantly going further down, and the people at the top, you're having fewer and fewer persons at the top, you're going to have a breakdown in society at some point in time. And I think we have to actually take this kind of information and start to look at how we actually pay our persons and what percentage of the workforce is actually paid above market as against those that are paid below market.
So in 30 seconds before the break, Helene, are you saying that there is a structural reorganization that must happen, or is it simply growing the economy further than we have done over the last 20, 30 years?
Well, I think it's both, because the structural reorganization can only succeed if you are able to have economic growth. And if you have the economic growth, how you distribute the gains from that growth is what would take place in your actually restructuring how you pay workers in Jamaica.
Hear you on that. Hold the line for us. Helene Davis-White online. Keenan Fortner in studio. We're talking about wages and looking at where Jamaica sits on the pay totem, and more importantly, talking about how we can change this narrative. More on Lead Story after this.
Food, which means it's time for CVM Cook Shop. So throughout the month of December, we'll be getting busy in the kitchen with some of your favorite hosts, hello, chefs and brands who will be whipping up some traditional and not so traditional Christmas dishes in the Cook Shop. You ready for this?
Fan Central Pitchside, brought to you by Edgecam, in financial cooperation, Connect Services, Texaco, Jamaica Stock Exchange, and Sunshine Snacks.
Another way to look at this is that Jamaica has more low-paying jobs than most places in the Caribbean, which is not a good look. We are classified as a middle-income countries, but there are levels of middle-income countries, and Jamaica bringing up the rear in that particular race as the Bahamas, Barbados, St. Kitts, Nevis run away in the distance. The Cayman Islands, don't mention the Dominican Republic, and Jamaica among these stragglers at the moment. Keenan Fortner and Helene Davis-White are here with me. Okay, so Keenan, how with this data in our possession, and as Helene Davis-White says, the people in the know, trade unionists and other people, they knew these things from before. Mm-hmm. The approach to begin to change this, and is it a cycle that can be achieved within 5, 7 years, 3 years, what?
It's hard to achieve that in, the extreme short term, because it's a multiplicity of factors. Yes. The first thing you have to look at is now, what is our industrial policy? And what are the kinds of industries we want to attract?
We perhaps haven't had one since Robert Lightburn in the 50s, 60s, 70s.
Yeah, I mean, we had in 1996, but it hasn't been updated since. I mean, you're thinking about the new industries that come in that can pay more, and then how do you begin to fill the skills gap to prepare persons to take up those jobs? Mm-hmm. Because, if you can't attract the right industries, the higher paying jobs, if I'm a nuclear physicist in Jamaica, I'm going to be unemployed because I just don't need that right now. Yes. So, yes, we're trying a thing with STEM and what have you, but that, is not going to take 3 to 5 years. It may take 10 years or more. I just wanted to draw your attention to some really grim statistics. Yes. Thinking about the persons who are not self-employed, so they're in formal full-time employment. Yes. Persons who are on the PAYE and what have you. 70 to 75% of people who are not, in that category do not earn enough to pay income tax. Yes. They fall below the threshold. Another 23%, basically what you can call the middle class, will earn up to the next threshold of 6 million, and then 2 to 3% will earn above 6 million. Yes. Now, if you just look at that broadly correlates with what Helene was saying. A large mass of persons are at the bottom and very small minorities at the top. Yes. And that pervades across most industries. How do we solve the problem? You start to think about upskilling and reskilling. Yes. The last labor force survey had around 11,000 people fell out of working. So they were working the previous quarter and they're not working now. Mm-hmm. And it's not because there were job losses. Mm-hmm. Why do persons leave jobs? Probably because they're not being paid enough. Right. And then another 10,000 people who were looking just stopped looking. We have reached a point where it's called full employment. Everybody who wants to work and has the skills demanded by the market is employed. Yes. But if I want to work and I don't have the skills by the market, I'm going to be unemployed. Yes. So it's about changing that dynamic in terms of the skills that are demanded. Then how do you begin to supply those skills through education, training, certification, and what have you?
Helene, the people unfairly, I believe, say that unions don't like hearing the word productivity, and productivity increases that phrase. But I believe that to not be true. So what we found is that governments over time speak of productivity and say they want productivity, but the structure to facilitate enhanced productivity does not exist. You expect the workers by themselves to just start producing at a higher level more efficiently when there's no facilitation in place. You would agree that that has to change?
Of course, and in fact, what we have been saying too, if you only focus on labor productivity, you're going to come away with a view that workers are unproductive. But if you look at total factor productivity, what you will be recognizing is that Jamaica also lags the Caribbean, I believe, in terms of, the use of technology. And because when you have research and development and you have your companies and the various industries actually focusing on research and development and the introduction of new technology, you will at that point find that workers become more productive, because you can't expect more productive workers if you have outdated equipment, etc., etc. So we feel that a lot more has to be done by companies in terms of investing in research and development, investing in training. A lot of private sector companies actually raid the public sector. Instead of investing in training, they raid the public sector and they get the skills from the public sector, because people do not want to stay in the public sector because of the low wages. So I think if we are going to change the needle any at all, it has to be an approach where we all as stakeholders recognize the importance of economic growth. That is what has eluded us, and everything has been tried, and you just get this minimal, meager economic growth. Sometimes you hear that it is negative. I don't know how you can have negative growth, but that is what it is. So unless we get to a point where we actually are able to do the upskilling and the reskilling, and also in terms of attracting in foreign direct investment, that we should not be focusing on the lower end of the market. So if we're looking at what is happening with BPOs, that's the lower end of the market. What we should be looking at doing is attracting in the higher end. And so you would now be able to pay people higher, but at the same time, you would need to ensure that the schools and the universities are graduating the persons with those skills. So it is not something that is very easy to fix. And I know as trade unionists, when we are speaking with our workers, we are saying to them the importance of training, retraining, making sure you are keeping pace with what is happening in the labor market in terms of what it is demanding, what are the skills that the labor market is demanding, so that you remain relevant as workers. But at the end of the day, it is something that I think all the partners have to come together and coalesce around this need for economic growth, and to have the kind of pay system that will encourage people to remain in Jamaica and to live out the 2030 agenda.
There you go. So here's the thing, Keenan. People will say, well, look, Jamaica, if you measure it against CARICOM countries, Haiti apart, the population is larger. We have more people in construction and that kind of industry, road maintenance, so forth. BPO, we have more BPO per capita than anywhere else in CARICOM, BPO workers. And when you compare the structure, the makeup of our job market to like the Antigua and Barbuda situation, where heavily services oriented, the Cayman Islands similar, the Bahamas similar, then the realities built into the Jamaican system would yield the kind of survey results and produce a kind of pay at the pay scales that we are seeing now. So to reorientate the Jamaican economy is going to take a generational thing for that to change. Is that a sound argument?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, we are trying to pivot to growth. The Prime Minister had announced this initiative. But as part of that pivot, you can't just pivot growth. You have to pivot the nature of employment. Because you're not going to achieve growth without that very high skilled labor force, high value added. Now, as much as efficiency gains are nice, those are good, right? But you don't achieve growth without adding value. You know, if I'm worth $10 this year, I need to be worth $20 next year. Yes. How do I do that? I have to add value in the production process or what have you. But because our economy is so heavily tilted towards services, that basically denotes extra education, extra training. We're not a assembly line kind of economy that we can have that sort of scale to sort of bring up the economy, and generate wealth that way. It has to be because of a very highly skilled, specialized services, education, training, bringing up the labor force. If you have only 15% of the labor force that's really driving the economy, only 20% of persons who are in formal employment that's paying earning enough to pay income tax. Those are not good structural things, and that goes back to so many different reforms. In fact, I'd say transformation, not just mere reforms of the economy, because we've been doing piecemeal for decades. Yes. So that sort of thing is going to take at least 10 years if you do it quickly enough, maybe 15, but ideally probably 20 to 30 years in real time.
Yes. And last question, Helene, quickly. Do you get the sense that government in the Jamaican case, that government and its key collaborators on this mission, do they get it the way both yourself and Keenan get it? Do they get it in terms of what the situation is, how long the situation has been with us, and the steps that must be taken to change the reality?
I think successive governments have actually, raised the issue. We have had various fora and think tanks and all the rest. I think what we have always lacked in Jamaica is the ability to effect and implement and to stay the course. And I think that is what we really need to do. That's one of the reasons why public sector reform and all of that has taken so long. Yes. Thankfully, we have gone through this with the pay raise, the compensation, restructuring, and there are other elements that are going on. But public sector by itself won't solve the problem. Yes. It is an important aspect, but it won't solve the problem. So I think, when the government had initially announced the Economic Growth Council, yes, that would have been a good idea. Yeah. What has happened?
Yeah. Hear you on that. Helene, I'm out of time. Thank you very much for joining me. Keenan, thank you very much for your time as well. There's enough time for me to say this. Look, additional mechanization has been absent from the Jamaican labor situation for some time. We still are producing, we're still farming the same way we did in 1980. We're still going about many industries the same way we did in 1990. Those things are antiquated. It's an antediluvian way of going about work and going about labor and productivity gains, efficiency gains, as Keaton Faulkner said. We are being left behind by the region, and we are being left behind by the world. And I don't know what it will take for stakeholders, not just government alone, public, private sector, to smell the coffee and start running. If you look at how salt is manufactured, you think the salt comes from the sea to your table. No, it goes, it's imported, it's trucked from the wharf to the factory. A laborer puts it into the vessel, then it goes to the lab processes, and this is where the higher paying jobs come now. The lab technicians test every batch to ensure that it conforms with standards. Those are where the higher paying jobs are. But instead we have a lot of people down at the driving level, the unloading level, back up the truck, dig it up with shovel, and that's where we are still in 2024. We won't get anywhere doing that kind of thing across so many.
Holiday happiness, that's Christmasing.
Y'all gonna have to get some fans.
Join the fans of Family Feud.
Brought to you by We Are the Caring Store, waiting to serve you. It's time to experience independent living. Visit us today.
Small business owners and independent contractors get affordable insurance with Sagicor Pro Shield. The time by Sagicor Life is
7 o'clock.
Hey you know all the people in your business?
You should take advantage of CVM TV's unbeatable small business advertising package. Trust me.
And get your goods and services in front of your customers today.
For $150,000, you get a high-quality professional commercial, plus 20 prime-time commercial spots.
That's massive exposure at a fraction of the cost.
Including on the #1 morning show in Jamaica, Sunrise.
So don't wait. Call us on 658-208-5377 and see your business goals happen right here on CVM Television.
Tonight in CVM News at 7 p.m. granted permission to challenge IC report. Bomb threat delays Dalrymple Philibert hearing and 24 years of missing records. JAMP slams government oversight. Also this evening in the business report, expanding Jamaica's recycling capabilities. And in sports, Mona High wins Walker Cup. News at 7 for Friday, December 6, 2024. Thanks so much for joining us. Prime Minister Andrew Holness has been given the green light by the Supreme Court to seek a judicial review of a report issued by the Integrity Commission. The report, which scrutinized his statutory declarations, has been at the center of much controversy. The court granted the Prime Minister leave on several grounds, paving the way for a legal challenge against the report's findings and the investigative processes led by the Commission's Director of Investigations, Kevon Stephenson. Holness's legal team deemed the findings unlawful and unfair. The Supreme Court's decision marks a significant step in Holness's efforts to clear his name and contest the Commission's conclusions. Representing the Integrity Commission in the matter is King's Counsel, Michael Hylton. The Kingston and St. Andrew Parish Court was rocked by delays on Thursday morning after a bomb threat disrupted proceedings. The hearing for former House Speaker Marissa Dalrymple Philibert was among the cases affected, pushing the decision on whether she will face trial to December 13. Dalrymple Philibert is accused of making false statements in her statutory declarations to the Integrity Commission spanning 2015 to 2020. The charges include failing to declare a government concession vehicle and 8 counts of breaching the Integrity Commission Act. The controversy has taken a toll on Dalrymple Philibert's career. She resigned as House Speaker in September 2023 following the accusations, but staged a political comeback in November, winning the Trelawney Southern by-election. The former Speaker's legal battle continues to draw national attention. The case resumes next week. The Education Ministry is once again facing criticism for its prolonged failure to account for billions in public funds. The Auditor General's 2023 annual report reveals the ministry has not submitted its appropriation accounts for a staggering 24 years. The Executive Director of the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal describes the situation as an accountability crisis, identifying the Ministry of Education along with the Ministries of Health and Labour as repeat offenders. With more on that development, here's Ramon Gordon.
The Education Ministry is once again under fire, slammed by JAMP for what it calls a deepening accountability crisis. For over 2 decades, the ministry, under both JLP and PNP administrations, has failed to submit certain financial records, raising serious concerns about how taxpayer dollars are being spent. According to the Auditor General, the ministry's failure to provide appropriation accounts has created a 24-year accountability gap, making it impossible to track the responsible use of billions in public funds.
It is not saying the money is missing. Yeah. We just don't know how it was spent. Whilst the Auditor General is speaking about the inability to advise us that all is well, she has been ringing alarm bells about many things in these ministries that are not well.
But the revelations go even further. The Auditor General's report exposes that more than $3 trillion in public expenditure across ministries remains unaccounted for. The Health and Labour ministries are listed among the worst culprits, with repeated delays and inaccuracies in their financial submissions.
These are actually financial crimes we're talking about. It's legislation that is being broken, which translates into a crime, which translates into a criminal offense. The simple principle of this is not your funds. These are our hard-earned monies that we have turned over for the benefit of the society, and they simply are required to tell us what you do with the money at the end of the year.
Finance Minister Favour Williams recently addressed the growing outrage, claiming ministries, departments and agencies submit monthly reports to the Finance Ministry to ensure transparency. Calder says that's insufficient.
I want to ask Mrs. Williams, with the greatest of respect, as someone coming from the private sector, if her company had been found to be out of compliance with a failure to report, and if her management team and her CEO failed for 1 year, 2 years in a row to come back to her and say, this is how I spent your hard-earned money, would Mrs. Williams respond in the way that she did today? And the answer is no. Not good enough for her business. It's not good enough for the country of Jamaica.
Even more troubling, the Houses of Parliament, the Ministry of Finance and the Office of the Prime Minister are also listed as offenders.
By next week, Tuesday, I would like to have a skeletal frame as to how the Prime Minister himself is going to have to superintend this to ensure that it gets done. But here is my concern. We opened the year in January with the Gleaners headline saying there's a $1 trillion crisis.
Yes.
Nothing moved.
Yes.
I am worried that if the people of Jamaica don't find a way to let the Prime Minister know how this is a betrayal of the people and their assets, then I don't think anything is going to move, unfortunately.
CVM News contacted the Education Ministry for response, but there was no comment up to news time. Ramon Gordon for CVM News.
Now, there could be shortages in medical services if the government fails to bring a resolution to overtime pay negotiations for members of the Jamaican Medical Doctors Association. The association complains its members are being unfairly treated and is demanding immediate action. Shantae McNeil picks up that story.
Frustration is rising, and services could soon be withdrawn by members of the Jamaica Medical Doctors Association, JMDA, if the finance and health ministries don't act swiftly to resolve ongoing overtime pay negotiations. JMDA President Renee Badro describes the situation as a calm before the storm, urging the ministries to take action as they have for other public sectors.
Give us the retroactive money that is due to us, and let us move on from this whole issue as we're in a new negotiating cycle and we have other pressing issues and matters to discuss. I cannot give any guarantee that our doctors and our members will continue normalcy for the upcoming days. It's beyond my control. Our members are frustrated and they're disgruntled and they are reactive.
The latest message follows another unproductive meeting with government officials over a dispute that, according to the JMDA, should have been settled since March of last year. In a statement issued on Thursday, the association criticized the lack of transparency, demanding a resolution within 24 hours. President Badro explained the toll it has taken on healthcare workers.
They feel demoralized, they feel disrespected, and they feel that their value is being not appreciated by the ministry and by the government. And the overwhelming majority of our doctors are Jamaicans, and we're first of all Jamaican citizens. So for the ministry to treat its people like this, our doctors are very demoralized.
Badro stressed that this issue isn't just about pay, but about respect and fairness for healthcare workers. The JMDA is calling on the public to understand the challenges faced by medical professionals and to show support as they navigate this critical phase. Shante McNeil, CVM News.
And CVM News at 7 will continue in a moment.
Moments for the family. Sign up for a home fiber bundle for as low as $7,399 plus GCT and get installed. You could win a bag of things valued at over $400,000. Digital Plus. Better connected this Christmas.
You've been dreaming about it. The sun shining on your face. The warmth of family. The embrace of the island breeze. And the sweet kiss of tropical waters. You've been dreaming of a place where melodies fill the air, flavors dance on your tongue, and your heartbeat sings to the rhythm of your people. You've been dreaming of home. This Christmas, visit Jamaica and come back to where your heart belongs.
Welcome back. Thanks so much for staying with us. Now, with the advancement of technology, there is a need for businesses to upgrade their data protection methods. But some experts in the field believe there is a lack of education on its importance, especially in the Caribbean. Trisha Gay Kelly reports.
Cybersecurity is now a serious global concern. In the region, it's even more dire, with less resources to keep people's personal data secure. Among the top 3 challenges is the lack of awareness around the importance of cybersecurity. Director at PwC Trinidad and Tobago, Anthony Zamor, says most hackers use a business email compromise to lure their victims.
This is very, very common, especially among small organizations who think that, okay, we're small, nobody is targeting us, we're under the radar, and that couldn't be anything further from the truth. So, number one, education. So small and medium-sized organizations in particular, a lot of entrepreneurs here, so the entrepreneurs have to understand that cybersecurity risks, like the one I just described, could essentially cripple your business.
For years, experts have urged companies, especially government agencies, to have heavy data security measures, including storing data on the cloud. However, the experts believe most agencies have failed to do so out of fear of not knowing what will happen to their data, as well as the public's perception of the cloud. Senior Business Development Officer at Flow, Carol Robertson, says there are some agencies, however, that are gravitating to the idea.
I can think of, while I sit here, a few government entities who have deployed services in the cloud, who are looking and seeking to deploy services in the cloud. And the reason they are doing it is because they have established for themselves a certain knowledge and a comfort and created the environment, both technologically and with their teams and their customers and their stakeholders, about the security of doing so.
Hackers, scammers, and all other threats to security have one thing in common. They all study behavioral patterns. That's the reason why Robertson believes companies should adjust their perspectives on being cyber secure.
This morning we said we have to find a way to stay ahead. And my thing is, there's no staying ahead. I think the days of being ahead are kind of over. We have to just play. Find our niche, find our space, and play in that space. But this drive to be ahead, to do, is a behavioral weakness that our cyber criminals play on, and we need to become cognizant of it, and therefore don't respond to it.
Trisha Gay Kelly, CVM News.
And Jamaica's tourism industry is set to be on track to welcome 4 million visitors by year-end. Speaking at the Tech Beach Retreat in Montego Bay, Tourism Minister Edmund Bartlett highlighted the sector's global impact, calling it the biggest driver of wealth creation worldwide.
This year, 1.5 billion people are going to be traveling across the world, spending $5 trillion listening to our stories and believing them. So Jamaica is likely to have just about 4 million of those this year, and they'll be spending a little over $4 billion. Not a bad idea for a little country, and a good idea. Tourism has simply become the most pervasive activity on planet Earth for the transfer of wealth among peoples. As it is said, as a plane flies, it brings the wealth. As the ship docks in the port, it brings the wealth and is transferred into the pockets of the ordinary people through service.
You're watching CVM News at 7.
Brought to you by Edgechem. In Financial Corporation, connects services.
Welcome back. At this point, we want to go live to the National Stadium for the second half of that Manning Cup final, Kingston College versus St. Catherine High. Watch and enjoy.
They have to. That will be integral to them turning this one around. They have to find a way to overload those central areas.
Schoolboy football brought to you by Edgechem. In Financial Corporation, connects services, Texaco, Jamaica Stock Exchange, and Sunshine Snacks.
The same fire, the same verve, especially on the defensive end, because they have been fantastic and they have followed the fantastic setup from Vassar Reynolds to a T. In that first half, it was a coaching masterclass, especially out of possession, and I just love that personally, but they have to keep it up. They cannot let off the brakes. St. Catherine will be rearing to go. They need a goal early in the second half to turn things around.
Green, that's one forward. Marion Brown able to hold on to it as we get the action on the way. Throwing for St. Catherine, taken quickly. Young. Being checked by Green. His shot charged down. Ball forward. Gray can't get around Kimani Reese. And of course they know each other from their time together at Kingston College. Gray got that one almost through. One, and Patterson trying to clear. Handle ball.
Yeah, Patterson has been putting in a real defensive shift. Today I said he was covering that right-hand channel so